Have you ever woke up in the morning and thought to yourself, I have a really dumb idea. This probably shouldn't be done. Why hasn't anyone tried it? But you just can't let it go? This is one of those ideas. Triple vertical 75s. So after actually spending some time with this setup, I realized the conversation's not so much about how crazy it looks, even if it does. It's about what you gain and what you give up when you do screens this big in a vertical format. Now, this isn't my first screen setup. I've had triple 27s, triple 55s, triple LG 45-inch 800R curves, and I've spent a lot of time in VR. So when I set out to try this, it was trying to combine all the best of every setup into one. I knew there'd be trade-offs, of course. The biggest and most obvious advantage of this setup is the vertical field of view. It's massive. In Flight Sim, it changes everything. You're not choosing between seeing the runway or your instruments. You're not constantly adjusting your camera angles. You just see more. More sky, more ground, more cockpit, and the longer you fly for, the more that matters. For me, flying sessions are long. I might race for maybe an hour, but when I start to fly, it can be 4 more hours, and that's where VR really starts to suck. VR is incredible, it's immersive, I love it. But for long sessions, especially 4+ hours, it's really uncomfortable. The heat, the pressure on your face, the eye strain, it all adds up. So for me, I like VR for racing and screens for flying. This setup is very much built for how I actually use the rig, which is mostly flying. Now, of course, there's downsides, so let's talk about those. First, this is not a racing optimized setup. If you're using this purely for racing, I would not recommend it. The field of view is way harder to dial in, the screens are further away, small changes make a bigger difference, and yeah, I know, field of view police, you're already in the comments commenting, I can hear you typing. The field of view here is not as good as it was on my triple 45s. I'd argue it's not even as good as 32s or 35s. Those were easier to dial in and objectively better for pure driving geometry. Another downside is eye alignment. Because the screens are so tall and they're sitting on the floor, the center line of the screens actually ends up below my natural line of sight. That means the horizon needs to be adjusted upward. Some sims handle this really well, like iRacing. You can just adjust it. Others don't. Specifically, Star Citizen and Microsoft Flight Simulator do not have a horizon adjustment. So you end up compromising. Either the cockpit feels right or the outside world feels right, but not always both. Sometimes it can be fixed just by panning the camera downwards a little bit, and it feels okay. Let's be honest, most sims are not designed to be viewed this far vertically from a fixed camera position. They're built around a pretty, what we're going to call normal field of view for vertical. Once the screens start to get this tall, the upper portion of the cockpit can really start to feel stretched. You can see it in some of my flying shots, especially the ones filmed from behind the rig, where the top of the cockpit looks really tall. In person, sitting in the seat, it's not as bad as it looks on camera, I promise. It's just a perspective difference. If you look at the first-person view shots, they look much more normal, and that's more along the lines of what it actually looks like. You can tune around it, minimize it with different zoom levels, but you can't completely eliminate it. It's just part of the trade-off. All right, I know, this has been mostly negative. You're going to think I hate this setup. I don't. So let's get into some of the good stuff. One important thing to point out is you're not married to this vertical height. Most sims and games in general allow you to run windowed mode. So if you want, you can shrink the sim vertically and only use the amount of screen you actually need. And when you do that, the extra space above becomes really useful. You can throw a track map up there, charts, checklists, Discord, streaming controls, OBS, whatever makes sense for how you use your rig. So even if you don't want all the vertical field of view for a specific game, that space doesn't go to waste. It basically just turns the top and bottom portion into spare monitors. Where this setup really shines is its versatility. I can fly for hours comfortably, I can still jump into a race without changing anything, I can use the extra screen space for maps, instruments, data without blocking my main view, and when I want maximum immersion, I still VR, and that's what I usually use. Let's be honest, this setup is not for everyone. If you're a dedicated sim racer who only drives and wants a perfect racing field of view, there are definitely better options, and I would highly recommend the LG 45-inch curves. But if you enjoy both flying and racing, and you spend way more time in the air than on the track, this is actually a very practical solution. It's a compromise, but it's a very intentional compromise. So yeah, it's not perfect, but for how I actually use my rig, long flight sessions, shorter races, and motion, this setup makes a lot of sense. And once you experience that vertical field of view in flight, it's really hard to give up. If this was helpful, or if you're just curious where this setup is going next, go ahead, hit the like. It really helps the channel. And if you want to see more real-world testing, tweaks, and experiments like this, consider subscribing. I've got a lot more planned for this rig. I appreciate everyone watching.